returning to her home village, Lisa expected nothing but ridicule. Her belly was already visible. She could hardly hide it, and she wouldn't have tried, for goodness sake. But she'd been out for a walk. No one's immune to it. Lisa herself looked like a life-ruined cat, disappointed with herself. Fate had really treated her unfairly. Anyone else would have been given a chance. But what was there to think about? It's time to focus her thoughts on her future children. How awful, she thought to herself as she rode the train. How will I look into my mother's eyes? She's the only one who believed in me. And I let her down, and I didn't make a career, I didn't earn any money, and I had a potbelly on top of that. Lisa's thoughts were interrupted when she fell asleep. And that happened almost as soon as she got on the train. She had no energy for anything. She wanted to fall through the ground. She didn't know how to go on, and she didn't expect advice from anyone. No sympathy either. If anyone could understand her, it was her mother. She was the only person who always supported her in everything. From the very early childhood, Lisa dreamed of becoming a singer, fantasized how she would stand on the same stage with famous stars and receive awards. And having barely finished school, she went after her dream. Her mother, who from the last strength pulled her daughter, working several jobs. Lisa was supportive of her decision. "That's right, dear," Betty said. "You can't bury your talent in the ground. Otherwise, at any rate, you'll grow old, and then you'll regret it all your life." The woman herself couldn't realize her dreams. They remained hanging in her bedroom. Paintings she once painted in her youth, which no one wanted. Betty saw no point in grieving her fate. Why reminisce about the past when life had already happened? What was, and is long gone. No talent. Just screaming. Sentenced Christina without giving her false hopes. It's a big capital city. They have their own clowns with microphones. Unlike her mother, Lisa's grandmother was strict. She didn't believe in either her daughter's realization or her granddaughter's. At one time, it was she who instilled Betty with insecurity. It was probably for this reason that she was unable to achieve anything in life. When the woman once, just like Lisa, who believed in her dream, returned from the capital with nothing, Christina gave her an unkind reprimand. "You'll know how to get in the way, won't you?" And she was thinking of going into painting too. "That's only for the chosen ones. And your share is collective and state farms. So I'm content with that." Betty didn't try again. "I didn't have time for that." She came back from the capital to give birth, and she had nothing ready. The situation of the then quite young, inexperienced girl was another reason for reproaches and ridicule. The mother, though she supported her daughter as much as she could, did not forget to mention that Betty had survived the child and would now spend the rest of her life pulling this burden. "All right, you repeated her mistake, and we repeated it." Christina sighed, "But at least I'd been away from a local, or even someone I didn't even know." At that moment, Betty least wanted to hear reproaches, but she was forced to endure any attacks of her mother. The locals were not shy in expressions either. In the village, the girl was so winged at anything in the world, and hummingbird hut, and without a husband, so in general branded people of the old school. What can you do, modern life, which in that period of time when Betty was still young was just emerging, they could not understand. Such they remain to this day, grandmothers with sand coming out of their heads, but still there. As soon as Lisa crossed the threshold of her home, so went the gossip around the village. Even if you keep your nose out of the window, you're bound to hear something nasty about yourself. "Oh my goodness," Betty exclaimed when she saw her daughter. "Why didn't you say so?" "Oh, Mom." "It's a long story," replied the girl. "Let's tell it all later." Christina couldn't help herself. "Betty, look who you've raised," she said. "Is your daughter following in your footsteps?" "In your footsteps, just like you." Lisa didn't get much support from her friends either. How did she find out? Emily and Camille that she's back. She was laughing her ass off. And there was no stopping it. "Why are you so down?" She asked Camille, "Where's your cowboy from the capital? Why didn't he come with you? Or didn't he want your belly?" Then she apologized, of course. It's like when we were kids, first they laugh at each other, and then they repent and laugh. Only Lisa grew up during the year she lived in the capital, but the girls didn't. They remained the same fools. But even they were in a better position than Lisa at that moment. How could she have gotten herself into such a mess? She made a vow to herself that she would do anything but repeat her mother's fate. She hadn't kept her word. And that was even more hurtful. "Come on, tell me, how did it happen?" Mother was interrogated. Grandma went to visit a neighbor. Again, the whole day will discuss soap operas to Kostya local rinse. They can't live a day without gossip. All they want to do is talk, so you can tell it like it is. No one's warming your ears. What's there to tell? Mom? Lisa sighed. You can see for yourself. I found out too late. Of course I would have dropped it. Where can I go now? I have nothing, and now I'm going to have children. Children? Betty asked. Yes, babies, said Lisa. It's twins, so it's not that far along. The belly's huge, too. That's what they told me anyway. That's silly. The woman laughed. Oh, hilarious. What shallow people will not say. A double bifurcation. Do you even know this from a doctor? Or did your grandmother whisper it? From a doctor, from a doctor. Who else? I felt bad, knowing something was wrong. There was no delay, but I went anyway. And there was a surprise. And the main thing is, there's nothing you can do. It's too late. As they say, it's too late to drink Borjomi when your kidneys fail. Oh, the lyrics are funny. You laughed again. When she says something, that's it. Lights out. You were right to go to the doctor. At least you got to know. I'll tell you from my own experience. Women always feel these things. When I got pregnant with you, I knew I wasn't alone. But to get rid of the baby, it never even crossed my mind. And all that nonsense, don't you dare think. You'll have a baby, we'll raise it. Betty didn't ask her daughter who the father was. She knew how painful and unpleasant such questions could be. Lisa was grateful for her tactfulness. She didn't want to think about the man at all. She had loved him so much, trusted him so much, and he had betrayed her, thrown her away like an old used rag, without blinking an eye. That's what musicians are, creative people, no responsibility. What does he care? What does he care about any of this? Daddy will provide for his life and his career. And forget about the kid, he'll have plenty of girls. But with his looks and charisma, it's impossible not to fall in love with such a young man. So Lisa fell for it. She did. But he turned out to be a rotten kid. He immediately made it clear that he wasn't ready to become a father and that he didn't need Lisa or her pregnancy for nothing. He threw her out like a kitten in the cold and probably forgot to think about her. Upon arrival in the capital, Lisa bypassed all possible castings, but the modest creativity of the girl, who, although she stood out against the background of others, seriously no one was not interested. To achieve something, a good voice is not enough, said the producer, looking around. You need reinforcements, money, connections, influential patrons. The girl immediately understood what he was implying, but she would never have agreed to such a thing. She was too well-mannered and self-respecting. Lisa couldn't afford to go to bed with a bald, plush man who was more than 20 years older than she was. The money allocated by her mother was running out, and for want of anything better, Lisa got a job in a restaurant. The atmosphere there was little better than at the auditions she went to. But still no one forced her to go to bed with him. That's where she met Benjamin. The girl immediately recognized him, young and already quite popular man, whose clips were gaining huge coverage in social networks. It was difficult to confuse him with someone else. Seeing him, the girl couldn't believe her eyes. What is he doing here? She thought to herself as the chef announced to the waiters that the restaurant was closing for special service today. Is he really going to sing in the restaurant? But that's not his level. This level was just right for Benjamin, who earned most of his royalties at corporate events and other parties. The young man's father was very influential and regularly rearranged his son for various kinds of performances, which did not cancel the popularity that he earned on his own. Performances at corporate events paid decently. Benjamin was pleased that his dad was providing him with such a decent level of income. That night he performed for the children of famous people. The program was planned in advance. The preparations for the wedding ceremony lasted several months. This event was very important for the majors. Benjamin decided on a little improvisation, thanks to which Lisa for the first time in her life performed not for her own, but for outsiders, hoping to get an independent assessment of her work. If there are those people here who genuinely love creativity and are eager to share it with everyone around them, said Benjamin from the converted stage in the middle of the restaurant hall, you are welcome to join our humble performance. Lisa made up her mind. She herself could hardly believe she had done it. "May I?" I asked her and extended her hand upward. "Low-talented waitresses?" Benjamin exclaimed, "That's okay." Many of the world's stars started their careers washing plates and floors. "Welcome." Taking the microphone in her hands, Lisa sang. The girl chose compositions of her previously written songs, which she composed in her teens. Her mother kept old musical instruments at home, a piano and a guitar, which her great-grandfather loved to play drunkenly. Thanks to this, Lisa could write songs. They were not very professional, but soulful. The audience listened to the girl's performances with open mouths. Lisa froze with happiness when she heard applause after finishing a song. "Wow," Benjamin exclaimed, "a real talent. I would even dare to say a diamond." Lisa was shocked by the reception. Among the people present in the restaurant, some of the faces were familiar to her. She had seen them on social media and at concerts. Their pictures were all over the Capitol stands. Here it was, her moment of fame. The girl could not even guess what was ahead of her. Having finished singing, she continued to serve the visitors, from each of whom she heard raptures and praise. The evening was coming to an end. The guests were already quite drunk, and the newlyweds wanted to go to their luxurious mansion, given as a wedding gift by their parents, to be alone at last. Lisa and the other waitresses, who were looking at her spitefully, began to clean up the plates for the guests. The girls didn't hesitate to tease their coworker once they were in the kitchen. "Did you decide to jump from the dumpster to the stars?" Evelyn, who was neither smart nor good-looking, said wryly. "Well, but you're not in the village. Even if you manage to pick up a man who can get you on stage, you'll still be broke. You know how many people like you there are here, ponds full, and there's new ones coming in every day." Lisa ignored her colleague's remark. After changing her clothes, she left the restaurant and was about to go home when she saw Benjamin getting out of the car. "All under the vase," the young man said. "I'll walk home by myself," Lisa replied. "I don't live far from here. Thank you." And I said fall, so fall. "Not to argue with a native Muscovite," grinned Benjamin. There was neither strength nor desire to resist such pressure from Lisa. It remained only to obey. When the girl got into the car, the young man handed her an envelope. "What is this?" she asked. "It's the fee for your performance tonight," he replied. It worked. When Lisa opened the envelope, she was stunned that she would have had to work in a restaurant for months for that kind of money. "Are you sure it's not too much?" she asked. "It's just right," Benjamin replied. "It's only 10% of my fee. It's not too much, it's not enough." Lisa couldn't find anything to say to the young man. As promised, he drove her home, looping yards and circles. It would have been quicker to walk. Both he and she understood that. "Would you like to sing?" he asked. "I don't mean all this amateurish buffoonery, but for real, professionally," Lisa replied. "I've been dreaming of singing since childhood." "Then write your phone number," Benjamin winked. "We'll find a way to help you break through to the stars, won't we?" He walked her to the apartment where she was renting a room. She tried to be as quiet as possible so as not to wake the neighbors. The locals already didn't like the contingent of young people renting. They were always fighting with the owners about it. It was better not to get into trouble. Lisa rented a small room from a pensioner who had inherited it from her late sister. Granny herself lived in a neighboring building, and if she called the neighbors once, she would come running to deal with the neglectful apartment. Being on the street was not in Lisa's plans, but the scandal couldn't be avoided. "How many times have I told you not to come back at?" Jenna was indignant. The old woman came to the apartment right from the morning and, bursting into Lisa's room, began to saw the girl. The latter only kept silent in response, not wanting to pounce. She realized her meager situation. The old woman would be right anyway, and she would have to go out on the street, because there was nowhere else for a girl to go in the capital. Lisa was guiltily silent, and Jenna continued to count her out. "People are sleepy. They wake up to a knock on the door. Voice, sweet woman, you should have a little conscience. I'm going to get another report like that. I'll throw you out the door with no explanation." Having finished her tirade, Jenna left the room. In the hallway, Lisa heard a snippet of conversation with her neighbor Wendy, the main snitch among the utility workers. What else is a pensioner to do all day long? Just watch TV shows and keep an eye on the tenants. Luckily, Lisa wasn't on her shift that day. Otherwise, listening to the indignation of the landlady, she would have been late for the restaurant. When the voices died down, the girl quietly went to the shower. When she returned, she saw several missed calls. "The sound of keys," muttered Wendy, whom Lisa hadn't even noticed. She had crept up so stealthily that the girl almost shuddered with surprise. "Here we go." The old woman kept muttering. "There is no peace from you. Evicted everyone to hell." Benjamin's number was displayed. Lisa immediately called the young man back. "Why are you so early?" she asked. "Did something happen?" "No," he answered. "I wanted to invite you to the rehearsal. Will you come?" Lisa couldn't believe her ears. Benjamin. He invited her to the concert hall. At that moment, she felt like she was in some happy fairy tale. Everything that was happening just couldn't be real. And when the young man offered her to perform with him in nightclubs, Lisa was speechless. "I've been thinking about a duet for a long time. He also said that I need a soloist." "But you understand, the first time. Until the program is not tested, no big concerts are out of the question. After all, such an audience pays money for tickets for the sake of a perfect and worked-out program. I can take you to the clubs with me. You'll get some experience, and it pays pretty well. I perform regularly. If it's okay with me, it's okay with you." Lisa was happy. She was so excited to show off her success to her mom and grandma. A week old, she'd already met a man in the capital. She's starting her career. Isn't that something to be proud of? But afraid to jinx it, the girl restrained herself. "No, it's not a good idea to say anything yet. Or what if then something goes wrong and I'll be laughed at," she thought to herself. Her whole life was like a fairy tale. Lisa quickly gained popularity in the club environment. Her songs fit perfectly into Benjamin's program. Their duet stood out favorably against the background of other young performers. The money really paid decent. Lisa even surprised herself with such a high fee. Until then, it seemed to her that performances in nightclubs is something second-rate, which are ready to go only beginner young performers for lack of better. But it turned out that the girl was wrong. Such establishments hung out representatives of the golden youth, and tickets cost almost as much as concerts in decent halls. Because of the new work schedule and lifestyle, Lisa regularly scandalized with the hostess. Jenna was outraged to the core by the tenant's behavior. But unlike that, from the very first time, Lisa was no longer afraid to stay on the street. "The girl had enough money to rent her own apartment. Moving in with me," Benjamin said. "Why would you do that? And how can I pay the rent?" "You'd better spend that money on decent clothes. Otherwise, when you perform in front of a respectable audience, we dress like a wiretap. Don't take offense. There's definitely a certain flavor to it, but we have to change." Benjamin's proposal came as a complete surprise to Lisa. The girl did not understand the status of their relationship and would have liked to clarify it. But having asked the young man a direct question, she heard an evasive and not quite concrete answer. "I'm not offering you to sleep in the same bed with me," he said. "We could have a very successful creative partnership. I have a beautiful one-bedroom apartment, plenty of room." The apartment was given to the young man by his father on his coming of age. Receiving such a generous gift, Benjamin was delighted. "Thank you, Father," he said. "You're welcome," replied Ethan. "You have to get used to living on your own from a young age." But such a life in Benjamin's case was very tentative. All the young man's expenses were paid by his father. He was also able to make a career as a musician solely at his expense. Benjamin simply would not have enough money to shoot clips or record songs. Talk about cooperation with large companies that were engaged in organizing corporate parties, and not at all. Where did a yesterday's schoolboy get such connections? The only thing Benjamin did himself was to promote himself on the internet. And even for that, he took money from his father. If the young man organized on his own, the advertising was paid by Ethan. And the man did not spare any money for his son's promotion. He wants to be a musician, will bury talent in the ground, cannot. The young man's apartment was impressive in its size. On such a living space could accommodate a whole family. When Lisa entered it for the first time, she was almost speechless. The girl stood and looked at the furniture and interior. Everything was so luxurious that ordinary people could see such things only in the movies. For Benjamin, it was the norm of life. Not the biggest apartment and not the most expensive. Some of his friends had gotten much nicer houses, but he was content with that. The young man gave Lisa a large room. He himself was used to living in the smaller one, which was always a creative mess and hadn't been dusted for months. "Why is it so dirty?" Lisa asked. "Come on, I'll do it." "Don't," exclaimed Benjamin. "Don't touch anything. I've got everything in its place. I won't find anything later." At first, they really lived as neighbors. But after a few months, Benjamin and Lisa started a relationship. It's hard to imagine it any other way. And if for Lisa everything that was happening was serious, Benjamin treated her as just another temporary friend. Yes, they had many common interests, but that was no reason to start a family. He believed that one way or another, she was truly in love with Benjamin. Such strong feelings she had never felt for anyone, and never. The rumors in the hangout were no longer idle chatter. When Benjamin dragged Lisa, Benjamin's ex-girlfriend, everywhere, they looked at her with envy. That's the village, the dry land, the wheels behind their backs. She is ashamed to show her face anywhere, but he walks around and does not worry. 6 months ago, it would have been hard to imagine such a thing. Apparently, our Charles is having a creative crisis. Let's hope that it will soon pass and our music guru will pick up someone more decent. For the first time in many years, not only colleagues but also parents were interested in the young man's personal life. Ethan repeatedly asked his son to introduce him to the girl with whom he lives under the same roof. "Dad, but what's going on with you?" Benjamin asked. "Before you were never interested in the women I sleep with. What happened now all of a sudden? You never brought anyone home before," answered Ethan. "And this Lisa has been living in your apartment for months. Maybe you're getting married. As your father, I have a right to know. But believe me, it's nothing serious with her. Just a creative union and nothing more. We're just doing what's good for us. And if you want to meet her so badly, come to the club for a concert. Mom, bring it. You'll get to know her." "No, son, I don't go to those places. Mom and I would prefer a cozy family night." "Dad, listen to me," the young man exclaimed. "A cozy family night is a commitment. I'm not going to marry her. I'm still young. I'll need at least 10 years to go out. So get off the subject. Calm down." After saying that, Ethan backed away from his son. Benjamin was never one to throw words around. If he said he wasn't going to get married, he wasn't going to get married. And there was no point in dwelling on it. Benjamin didn't change his mind even after Lisa told him she was pregnant. By that time, they had already worked out a concert program in all Moscow clubs, and the young man was ready to offer the girl a contract for a serious performance. "We didn't agree like that," he said. "I think that you and yourself perfectly understand that neither you nor I do not need this problem. It needs to be solved as soon as possible." "It's too late," Benjamin sobbed, mumbled Adriana. "Too late." "What do you mean late?" he asked. How could it be late? The young man did not have the greatest ideas about the workings of a woman's body, but he was experienced enough to realize that a girl should find out about her pregnancy in the first month after conception, and there was still plenty of time to terminate this unwanted and planned circumstance. If this is not the case, then it follows that Lisa is lying to him, he thought, never really getting into the nuances. And Lisa really didn't know. "Which collective farm are you from?" he asked rudely. "You're so mature. Don't you watch yourself?" "Lisa, how could it be?" Benjamin had many girls. He was very popular with the opposite sex, but none of them had such problems. Lisa was the first girl to tell him she was pregnant. Benjamin was gripped by panic. Never before in his life had he found himself in such a stupid position. A child was absolutely not part of his plans, stated the reaction to such a mass would be unpredictable. No, of course he wouldn't withdraw his sponsorship. But to marry, to play in public happily, carefree married couple could be forced. And this implied a change of image, which Benjamin categorically did not want. The young man, without realizing it, found himself in a monstrous situation. He could not consult with his mother or ask her for the phone numbers of any familiar doctors who could take a risk for a lot of money. The woman would be sure to tell her father everything. There were never any secrets between them. And it's not a fact. There are doctors I know, only the police for nothing. Benjamin was lost in thought. Thoughts were jumbled in his head. Lisa was also experiencing mixed feelings. She had not planned to become a mother so soon, and she had expected a completely different reaction from Benjamin. It was one thing for him to be happy and accept the child, but it was another thing to put a burden on him without his consent. "We'll have to think of something," the young man said thoughtfully. "But we got rid of it somehow before, when we didn't have all this advanced technology and stuff." "Are you crazy?" asked Lisa. "I would never do such a thing. It could cost me my life." "Are you for real? What about him?" Benjamin did not immediately point to the door. The young man tried to come to terms with the situation and even prepared the ground for a conversation with his parents. But when Lisa came back after the ultrasound and told him that she was expecting 2 children, Benjamin's mind was blown. "Why not 3?" he asked. "Or 4? Why are you yelling at me?" the girl asked angrily. "As if it was my fault. Who's to blame?" Benjamin did not calm down. The young man realized that he was about to have to explain himself to his father about everything that had happened and came to the conclusion that he didn't need it at all. He does not want it and is not ready for it. And that means that there is only one way out of this situation. There is no other option and there can't be. "You what?" Lisa asked. "Are you going to kick me out?" "You can't just kick me out. What about our duet? What about our performance?" The girl was shocked by the young man's statement and didn't know what to say. She hoped that during the time they had spent together, she had become not only a roommate for Benjamin, but also a full-fledged business partner. But Lisa was wrong. He could perform without her. She was just a nice addition, but nothing more. "You think too highly of yourself," he said, "and you'll be forgotten in a week. I certainly won't be lost without you. I hope you have money for a ticket home. If not, I can give it to you. Understand that this is the only right thing for both of us. I don't want, and I'm not raising anyone. I don't need 2 kids. I'm young, I have my whole life and career ahead of me. I don't want to change my style for you. I've already got a bunch of songs written for the new album. I'm not going to let anyone ruin my creative plans." Lisa had no choice but to leave. If she had been bolder and more brazen, she would have told Ethan about her son's shenanigans. Eventually, she would have gotten child support. But she wasn't. Unexpectedly to herself, the girl became not only timid but fearful. She had never seen Benjamin so angry. The moment he yelled at her, she was truly frightened. "All right, I'll leave," she said. "I'll leave right tomorrow." "No," said Benjamin. "You're leaving today. I don't want to put up with you in my apartment another day." How she regretted at that moment that she had spent so much money. If she'd saved any, she'd have moved out of her rented place for nothing. A safety net room in the position she was in now would definitely come in handy. But it was too late to think about all that. That night Lisa had to spend at the station among homeless people and gypsies. She had no money even to eat in a cafe. She had to wait until morning for the next train. "You will become a big man," an old gypsy woman said to Lisa. From surprise, the girl was dumbfounded. She did not even notice how the woman approached her. "What do you want?" Lisa asked. She tried not to be rude to the gypsy. Even as a child, she had heard that one should not be rude to gypsies. It could be fraught with serious consequences. The village loved such legends, and Lisa believed them too. "I don't need anything," the old gypsy woman replied. "I don't even ask you to send me a pen, but I tell you the truth about your fate. Everything is as it is. You will become a big man and live as richly as you could never have dreamed." Lisa took some coins out of her pocket and put them in the gypsy's hand. When she turned to thank the woman a second time, the gypsy was gone. Lisa did not even have time to realize at what moment she had disappeared and where she could have hidden at the train station. It was not crowded. Tired people were sleeping right on the benches. Lisa's consciousness was getting confused. At that moment, she could not think about anything. The girl hardly waited for morning and, hearing that her train had arrived, found the right carriage and laid down on a shelf. She fell asleep almost immediately and woke up only when the train was approaching the town from which the bus to the village ran. Fortunately, at least she didn't have to wait for it. When Lisa came out of the station, several buses were already at the stop. Benjamin didn't even call to see how she had gotten there, or if she had gotten there at all. That hurt Lisa's bite. Did she really expect anything different? After Lisa left, Benjamin wasn't himself. But it wasn't the girl he was worried about. He was afraid that his father would find out what had caused their separation. He answered the man's expected question evasively. What was he supposed to say? Break up and break up. Who doesn't? Too bad, Ethan sighed. Benjamin didn't understand or share his father's regret. Why should he care? The young man wished his father would stop meddling in his life. But the man's regrets were not related to the separation itself, but to the financial part of the joint project. A good friend of his, who had long ago emigrated, became interested in the young couple's work and expressed a desire to invite them to work abroad. It would be a very lucrative contract, the man reasoned. By the way, why did you split up? Father, what nonsense is this? Waved Benjamin away. If you need to sell a duet with a soloist, I'll announce a casting call tomorrow. Hundreds, or even 1,000 girls from all over Moscow will come to it and will be happy if they are offered such cooperation. Ethan, did you like your son's idea? He didn't think of it for some reason. Too tired, I guess. It's too much to cover. The man promised to talk to his buddy, but that night he gave Benjamin the slip. The man said it was Lisa he wanted. He had his own reasons, which he didn't want to reveal. But Ethan didn't understand what was going on, so he decided to ask his friend what was driving him. You and I have known each other for 100 years, Michael, he said. You don't have to hide anything from me. It's a very long story, Michael replied. I don't want to discuss it with anyone, especially since I'm not completely sure. But I beg you, if you have any way of contacting this girl, let me know. I have to see her. I'm begging you. Michael was long and deeply married. A model family man, father of 2. Ethan had never noticed his passion for young girls, so he was surprised at his fixation on Lisa. Are you in love, friend? He asked. I'm sorry, perhaps I'm minding my own business, but it's strange to hear you say things like that. No, Michael answered, and after a few minutes of thought, he added, okay, you win. I'll tell you all about it, but not over the phone. We need to decide who's going to fly to whom, you to me or I to you. Let me come to you. Ethan offered. The man hadn't traveled for a long time. He wanted to rest, to unwind. Okay. Is Clara coming with you? They could go shopping with mine and just chat, talk about life. I'll ask her. Having finished talking to his buddy, Ethan immediately talked to his wife about the upcoming trip. Ethan, you know I'm a homebody, said Clara. I don't want to go anywhere. Why do you want to go? You and Michael haven't seen each other in years, and it's so urgent. Something's come up. Ethan didn't know what to say to his wife. He didn't know what was going on, and he was lost in conjecture. The man loved his wife very much and was grateful to her for never asking unnecessary questions or meddling in her business. The very next day, Ethan flew to Michael's house. He had visited him only once since his friend's emigration. He'd just settled in overseas. Now the man opened his mouth wide when he saw his friend's luxurious home. Are you settling in well? Not bad, he said thoughtfully. Not bad, but fine, Michael replied. The man was very happy with his life. His grown-up children did nothing but delight their father with their accomplishments. He, on the other hand, just lived and enjoyed his life and did not want more. It seemed that nothing could stir the man's soul and make him nervous. But it was only an illusion, which was dispelled very quickly. As soon as he saw the picture of Benjamin and Lisa. It's a pity Clara didn't come with you, Michael said. Why? Ethan asked. Yes, I wanted to talk to you alone. I'm afraid my wife might hear the conversation. I wouldn't want that to happen. You have secrets from Kathy? Surprised the man. Why would Michael be in the category of men that women are told you'll be like a stone wall with him? Kathy all my life. And married. Exactly. Even at a time in his life when Michael was just getting on his feet, his family never needed anything. He did everything he could to make Kathy happy. He fell in love with her already at a relatively conscious age. By the time of marriage, the future businessman had managed to get a diploma and even got his first job. Kathy struck him not only with her beauty, but also with her inquisitive mind and temperamental character. After meeting her, Michael did not notice any other women. And if some of his buddies still walked, from time to time trying to encourage him to cheat on his wife, he settled down once and for all. Noisy parties preferred hard work, as he dreamed of achieving a lot in life, get rich and put everything at the feet of his beloved wife. She gave him 2 children, a son and a daughter. He had always dreamed of this. Children stimulated the man to work even harder. For their sake he lived, he wanted to give his heirs all the best. And how could it be otherwise? What normal father does not want his children to be happy? Finding himself in a creative environment, Michael did not consider this activity as a job. He did not evaluate anything in that way. The man had a strong entrepreneurial spirit. Even while working in a salaried job, he calculated the benefits of the firm and other such things that managers usually do. He didn't plan on being a petty dryer for the rest of his life. It wasn't his thing. And as soon as the man was able to make a solid capital on the production, immediately decided to go abroad. "I don't know, Michael, it's up to you," Ethan told him. "I think there's a lot to be gained here." That's Michael's answer now. But you never know what's going to happen. And the foreign market is much more interesting in this sense. It's a different kind of money. You can't make that kind of money here. That's why I'll take my chances, and I advise you to do the same. The restaurant business there can also be organized on a grand scale. It's up to you, of course, but I think it's worth a try. Kathy understood her husband's decision. She always accepted his decisions. How could it be otherwise? Where's the husband going? And the wife? She loved Michael and was devoted to him. The woman never once regretted that they left. Abroad, their life took on new colors. In just a few years, Michael increased his income several times. Kathy and the children bathed in luxury. The man was happy. Only after the move he felt that he was fully realized. It was an inexpressible feeling. The last years he had been working not so actively for a trouble-free life, and the dividends received from shares and other investments were quite enough. Even if all the artists refused to cooperate with him, he would not be impoverished. This is the lifestyle he dreamed of and aspired to for so long. The children did not need anything. Having received a decent education, were able to find their place in life. What else was there to want? And here is not thought the man that someday will surface that happiness of his past, which he tried not to remember. But it did. He thought to himself about what to do next, and most importantly, how to tell his wife. How would Kathy feel about it? No higher. Would she take him out of her life? On the other hand, why? She has no reason to do so. He's always been faithful to her and never betrayed her. And what was there before her? The thoughts in the man's head were confusing. They were replacing each other so quickly that he couldn't concentrate at all on something specific he had shared with a friend. Ethan cleared his soul, a man of reliable, time-tested character. He'd never talked too much. But what was the next step? That was something he had to decide for himself. No one could do it for him. And he was afraid. Michael had never been so scared in his life. Probably because he couldn't stay away. But he had so much to lose. He was at a crossroads. On the one hand, he could have been, but on the other hand, he might not have been if fate had decided otherwise. "If I were you, I'd talk to Kathy first," Ethan said after listening to his friend. It wasn't a pleasant story, and it was hard to listen to. Ethan never thought he'd change his opinion of Michael so much in one moment. On the other hand, should he judge him? What right does he have to judge him? Things happen in life. What am I going to tell her? The man asked. "How do you envision this conversation?" "I don't know," answered Ethan. "But I'll tell you one trivial thing. People who are close to each other will always understand each other. And for you, Kathy has always been and will always be the closest person. She's always understood and accepted you. I think you'll find the right words this time, too." Of course she did. Of course she understood. Just not in proportion. Michael and Kathy had never been in a situation where she had to forgive him for anything. Now there was, and there was no telling how she'd behave when she found out about him. Something he was trying to forget. Ethan stayed at his friend's house for 2 weeks, and then he was leaving. "It's time, Michael, it's time," he said. "I have business to attend to in the capital. And you think about what I said, think hard." Michael's reflections dragged on for several months. The man could not find a place for himself. He fell asleep and woke up with the same thought, which was racing in his head in a circle, and could not make a decision. Kathy noticed that something was wrong with her husband, but she didn't dare to pry into his heart. Michael either told her everything himself or kept silent, preferring to hide his emotions from his wife. This continued until one day Kathy did not enter the room and saw her husband lying unconscious on the bed. She immediately called the doctor and Michael was taken to the hospital. "What's wrong with him, doctor?" Kathy asked in broken English. In so many years of living abroad, she had never been able to learn the language. Nor did she focus on that point. In the store, and the woman went with an interpreter who, as luck would have it, canceled for a few days at the most inopportune moment. Kathy tried frantically to call William, who had served them faithfully, having been Kathy's language representative for several years now. But he wasn't picking up. "Your husband is having a heart attack," the doctor replied. A few more minutes and we wouldn't have saved him. Kathy could barely make out the doctor's words, but when the woman realized what they meant, she almost fainted. Kathy realized that she had just almost lost her husband. What a nightmare. She thought to herself, "My poor baby." When he came to, the woman was already sitting by his bed. Kathy did not leave his side for a second. It was only when the man squeezed her hand that she calmed down a little. "Michael, what's wrong?" she asked. "How did this happen?" "You were perfectly healthy." Michael was indeed a very sturdy man. He was hardly ever ill, and the heart attack was a complete surprise to him. He didn't realize when he had missed the warning signs, as he had been going to the doctor regularly, undergoing all kinds of examinations and tests. "I don't know, Kathy." "I don't know," he replied. "Probably overexcited. The doctor will tell more." "But doctor..." Kathy did not hear anything clear, which made her even more worried. "But there must be some reason?" she insisted. The woman was surprised at herself. She spoke relatively fluently with the doctor, though some time ago she had thought that she had forgotten all foreign words and would not be able to make a dialogue unless William was there. But she had succeeded. "There are no specific reasons," the doctor replied. "It is unpredictable, and even a healthy lifestyle does not guarantee the absence of heart problems. Unfortunately, such attacks are getting younger. No one is immune from this. Nowadays, even a child can have a heart attack, let alone a middle-aged man." Michael recovered quickly enough. 2 weeks later, the man was discharged from the hospital. "He needs complete rest," the doctor said. "Try to avoid stress and serious shocks." Kathy heeded all recommendations. But Michael had time to make the decision he'd been putting off. He couldn't delay any longer. He realized this when he was in the hospital. For the first time in years, he faced a serious misunderstanding from his wife. The couple, who had lived soul to soul and almost never quarreled, had quarreled the very first day after Michael was discharged. "Where are you going to go?" Kathy was indignant. "The doctor told you to avoid stress and upheaval. You just got out of the hospital. What are you doing flying now?" Kathy didn't want to hear anything. Her worries about her husband were so strong that at that moment she was ready to tie him to the bed with ropes and watch him around the clock, just so that he would not dare to leave the house. But all the woman's efforts were in vain. It was useless to argue with Michael. Immediately after he was discharged, he called Ethan and told her of his imminent arrival. "I'll meet you. No problem," the man said. "You can stay at my place and stay as long as you want. I'll go with you if you need me to. I just need to know where to go. I'll ask Benjamin. He should know. Did you talk to Kathy? Are you coming with her?" "No," Michael answered. "You didn't? We had a fight. I don't think I'm going anywhere with her. I'm going alone." "What kind of fight?" Ethan was surprised. "You never fight." "But now we're fighting." Michael hadn't told his friend that he'd been in the hospital for 2 weeks. He didn't want to hear another lecture from him. But it was necessary to talk to Kathy. It wouldn't affect his decision. But Michael would have liked her to know before he left, not after. The conversation was going to be long and hard. The man had no time to prepare for it. He told it like it was. But in the first minutes afterwards, he heard only silence in response. Kathy could not find the right words. The woman simply could not believe that it was her husband, the man whom she for so many years considered a model of integrity, honesty, and justice. "Why are you silent?" he asked. "Will you say something? Just don't be silent, please." "What do you want me to say?" she answered. "What should I tell you?" "That you're not discussing me?" answered Michael. "That you are not disappointed in me and you still love me." "I can't tell you that." "I'm sorry, Michael. I need time to realize everything I just learned." "I love you very much. I'll tell you one thing right now. I'm really glad that after all these years you realized what you did, realized you were wrong and decided to make it right. That deserves respect. In return, I promise you that in time, I'll be able to accept it. Now get your stuff. Didn't you say you wanted to go somewhere? Maybe you could come with me. No, I'm not going with you. You've already called Ethan. He'll meet you. You have a place to stay. You won't be in a hotel, you'll be at home. I wish you the best of luck with everything else. Let me know how it goes. Kathy had mixed feelings about it. At the time, she was glad Michael was leaving. She wanted to be alone and reflect on what had happened. There was no way Kathy would have ever thought that something like this would come up. But Michael was, and is her husband, and will remain so forever. What she had learned could never undo the years together that she had been happy with him, the goodness, devotion, and love. It would remain forever. Michael left 2 days after his conversation with Kathy. She packed him the things he needed, saw him off, kissed him goodbye. It was business as usual. He hadn't traveled much in recent years, and Kathy had gotten used to packing. It was an opportunity to reminisce. After returning from the airport, the woman closed herself in her room and fell asleep. For the first time in weeks, she realized just how tired she was. She needed rest to regain her strength. And it was good that she could just go to bed instead of running the same thoughts through her head. At that moment, it was worth a lot, and Kathy appreciated the opportunity more than ever. On the way to Moscow, Michael thought about his past, things of bygone days. What could be more trivial? Everyone had once been young and irresponsible, and he was no exception. Then he had just started to live, entered the institute, received small scholarships, and like many other freshmen, had fun and walked by. He never passed a girl either. But he didn't dare to do anything serious. He met her, his first woman, by chance. On a rainy, overcast day, they stood together at the bus stop and waited for the bus. Could he have thought at that moment that things would go so far that there would come a moment when he would be blown away? He hadn't, and he hadn't guessed. It just happened, and no one could have predicted it. Word got around. She was just starting out, too. She dreamed of graduating from art school. She brought her paintings to the capital. But like 1 million other young girls dreaming of recognition and fame, she failed. The works were considered too banal and uninteresting, and she did not want to leave the capital. She rented a modest room, got a job. She didn't say anything to her mother. And how to explain to a person who initially did not believe that anything will work out? Is there any point in explaining anything? Michael himself did not remember that it was a banal crush that had caught him so strongly in her, which he would not have remembered 100 years later if he had not seen a girl like 2 drops of water similar to her. And it all came together. The memories came flooding back to him like never before. How ashamed he was of that night and that act. But there was nothing he could do about it. He went everywhere with her, introduced her to his friends. They joked that he was in love. There was no point in being offended. He really was in love. But if it wasn't for the alcohol that was flowing that night, he would never have done something he would have regretted. "It's my friend's birthday," he said. "Are you going?" "I don't know," she replied. "How convenient is that? It's fine. We're classmates. There'll be a lot of people there who don't know anyone. You're not the only one. So come on, guys, let's go, let's get to it fast." For many of the people there, that night was the first time they'd ever had a drink. Almost all from decent families. Until then, no one had ever taken a drop in their mouth. And if they did, and their parents found out, they'd be in trouble. But back then, anything was possible. By the end of the evening, no one noticed each other. Couples kissed in corners, everyone laughed and laughed. But not from the fun, but from the alcohol that hit the brain and beckoned the head. James's parents weren't due back for 2 days. When everyone was gone, he himself was sound asleep, and they had taken a moment to lock themselves in the next room. Afterwards, they fell asleep. They were awakened by the voice of a friend. They didn't even remember how much time had passed. "Oh, guys," said James, coming into the room and seeing the clothes strewn about. "Looks like you guys had a good time. I wish you'd shut the door. The laundry's only Kent is to wash before you go." He'd never been so embarrassed in his life. He'd apologize, he'd repent, he'd do anything to erase that night from his memory. In fact, he didn't remember anything. Maybe nothing had happened, but she remembered and felt everything. Foolishly, she hoped that this was the beginning of their serious relationship, which he did not even think about. A couple of months later, she realized she was pregnant. Bad timing, but I was sure he'd be happy. And he just threw up his hands and said, "Look, we're not even dating." "What kind of kids are we talking about? We need to work this out." "What do you mean we're not dating?" She was stunned. "So you're saying we're not serious?" "But you and I are young. We have our whole lives ahead of us. Even if we realize that we are a perfect couple and get married, where are we going to have kids now?" She was confused and didn't find a place for a few days. Then she made up her mind and went to the hospital. But the doctor scared her. "If you present a pregnancy now, there is a high probability that you will not be able to have children in the future," she said. It was not a threat, an objective reality. "I was afraid to tell my mother. I hoped to get out of it. I kept working, renting a place to live. But as soon as her belly became visible and she was kicked out of her room, 'Go to your homeland and have a baby,' the landlady said sternly. 'All the people living here are quiet. No one will tolerate children's cries. I can't leave you. If you have money to pay for the birth, live. No problem at work.' I couldn't make a deal either. Who needs a liar? And I couldn't count on any maternity pay. Her salary was paid in an envelope, and it was good that it was paid at all. She had no choice but to return to her small homeland, as the landlady advised. She herself grew up an orphan without a father, and she would become another orphan," her mother said. "What kind of orphans with living mothers?" she asked. "Such fatherless orphans. You have to breed these things. You have no brains. That I am a fool, that you are a fool, and life teaches you nothing. It would seem the affairs of bygone days, and would forget about all this and do not remember." She is holding 2 little sleeping boys in her arms, and for some reason she is replaying her youth in her head. "Mom, what are you thinking about?" Lisa asked. The girl had just returned from the local maternity hospital yesterday. The conditions, of course, are not capital. But all women give birth, and she gave birth. It was a difficult labor. The midwife could barely cope. Her sons were born prematurely, but strong and healthy. They were discharged immediately, even though Betty insisted on keeping them under observation. "We're full," the midwife said. "You can come if you need to. Others are coming, and you'll come without falling apart." Here, attitudes at the local maternity hospital have always left a lot to be desired. This Betty recalled from the time of her labor, and nothing had changed since then. The woman was brought out of her reverie. Not a word about her daughter, who was sitting across from her, looking at her sons, unable to believe that they had come into the world. And the loud knock on the door. "Lisa, go see who's there," Betty whispered. "And whoever is there, don't let the boys rush into the room." Coming out of the hay, the girl swung the doors open. On the threshold stood a middle-aged man and Ethan. Lisa was surprised at their visit. She had seen Benjamin's father only once, when the young man had stopped by to pick something up. She recognized him immediately, but she saw the other man for the first time. After a few minutes of silence, the girl invited them to go into the house and be quiet. "My children are asleep," she said. "What do you want?" "We'd like to talk," Ethan replied. "But not only to you, but also to your mother. If that's possible, of course. It is possible. But you'll have to wait a whole 2 later." The men were sitting in the next room. They were drinking tea and had not uttered a single word during this time. Lisa signaled to her mother that they had come to see her. Betty gestured to her daughter to explain that all conversations were only possible after the boys woke up. If she had only known who was waiting for her in the next room, she probably would have shrieked in surprise. But the woman didn't see him until 2 when the boys cried. Lisa politely said goodbye to her guests and retired to the next room, and Betty almost fainted. Even after all these years, she would recognize him from 1,000 other people. What was there to recognize him out of 1 million? Out of 1 million. "You," muttered she too. A few minutes later, a sepulchral silence hung in the air. All this time they looked at each other and could not utter a single word. "What are you doing here?" asked the woman. "How did you find me?" "It's a long story," Ethan intervened. "I think you'd better talk in private." He was anxious to see Lisa's sons, but hesitated to go in. Only half an hour later, when Betty and Michael had left the house, did the man ask if he could see the boys. "Why do you want to?" Betty replied. "Who are you anyway?" "I'm their grandfather," said Ethan. "Are you sure about that? Why should I be?" I'm sure when he heard about the children, he guessed why Lisa had disappeared so suddenly from Benjamin's life. And the timing was right. Oh, what a beating he'd give his son when he got to town. Anger raged in the man's soul. Raised a son out of your own head. All his life, you've done everything for him. And he's a bastard. It was hard to find other words. He thought to himself, I wish I hadn't spilled my anger all the way to the city. "Of course, come in," Lisa said politely. "The boys have just eaten. We're going out with them now. Can I come with you?" Ethan asked. "Of course," Lisa said. Betty realized that she was once again alone with her past. Michael recognized the answers to all his questions, but he wasn't going to leave. "It's important to me that you forgive me and understand," he said when they were alone again. "Yes, I'm very guilty before you, and nothing can atone for it. But it's been so many years." "Exactly, Michael," Betty replied. "It's been too many years to pursue the subject. It's all in the past, and there's nothing more for you and me to discuss. Lisa is an adult now." "I'll try to eat," explain. "If she wants to communicate with you, I'll be happy to. But you should leave now. Sit on the porch or outside the house, wait for your friend and get out of here. After all, this is my house, and I'm the boss of it." It's a good thing Mom is away for a few days visiting her gossipy friends, Betty thought to herself. If she had been here, the scandal would have been avoided. Seeing Michael after all these years and learning about his well-established love life, Betty was pained and resentful. She had never been able to open her heart to love after him. There were men in the village with whom she could have made a happy life, but she refused absolutely everyone. No one, except him, let her get so close to him. And he, it turns out, all these years lived happily and fell in love. He did everything he could for his wife, but he left her and Lisa to their fate. He didn't need children, you see. And he and his wife didn't always live richly either. He did not tell her that, because he loved her and she did not. The woman realized that she should not show her daughter any resentment. She should tell her about her father in passing, but in such a way that she would not think badly of him. If he still came, recognizing her from a photograph after all these years, it means that he feels guilty. After all, he's not a poor man and could help her. Betty wanted happiness for Lisa so she wouldn't have to survive as well. She deserved a different life, and the woman was willing to do anything to make sure her daughter didn't miss her opportunity. After the man left, the whole neighborhood was whispering oligarchs. Some clerks came to the territory. People, probably from the very capital, came to us. How could mere mortals compare to them? Christina, when she heard the gossip, she came running home early. "What's going on here?" The woman asked excitedly, "And people say there is a handkerchief for every mouth." "Mom," Betty replied sternly, "and you listen less and do more. We have small children in the house, and you go out all the time. And you don't talk down to me. I didn't give birth to them, and you can't tell me how to live my life." Talk to Lisa, Betty managed only a few days later, when the mother once again went to a neighbor. The woman didn't want Christina to hear their conversation. "Why do I need such a father, Mom?" asked the girl after hearing Betty. "I've lived without him for so many years, and I'll live the same number of years. Daughter, think about it." Her mother tried to talk some sense into her. "You have children. They won't be satisfied with love alone. You won't be happy later when you can hardly get enough for bread." Lisa knew her mother was right. But no matter how the woman did not soften the story of bygone days, the kind girl was not. She understood what was going on, and to forgive such a father is to find strength in yourself, and she did not have it. Michael was not going to forget his daughter. He intended to help, but he didn't know how. Until another brilliant idea popped into his head. The man had had many in his life, but this seemed the most promising. "How about we do a project?" he suggested to Ethan. The man didn't understand what he meant at first. "What are you talking about? What kind of project?" he asked. "For Lisa and Benjamin," Michael replied. "They have 2 children. And it's very fashionable now to make them some kind of folk songs. What, to get closer to the people? Lisa is from the countryside. It's her thing. I think it'll work. I never come up with bad ideas." "It's a good idea," Ethan agreed. "But they're not family. What did you leave Benjamin Lisa with anyway? I don't think she'll ever go back to him after that. When the man arrived in town, he gave his son a good beating. Benjamin didn't expect to see his father on his doorstep so early in the morning and so angry. For the first time in his life, Ethan spoke to the young man so harshly that he was even frightened. "How could you not tell me?" he asked. "How could you do that? You have no conscience." The young man realized that Lisa had been to see his father and had told him everything. Benjamin didn't know what to say. Yes, perhaps he was too cruelly wrong, but at that moment he did what he felt. And now he should be executed for it. "Your behavior is disgusting and immoral," Ethan said harshly. "I refuse to sponsor you. From this day forward, promote your art at your own expense." The man closed the door behind him without even saying goodbye. Benjamin was shocked by this behavior of his father. He did not know what he should do next. The young man's creative ideas had been very bad in recent months, and his finances were even worse. And his father was still helping him with his career until he found out what had happened to Lisa. But Benjamin was spending too much. The young man had no control over his spending, and sponsorship was out of the question. "Talk to Benjamin," Michael insisted. "I'll talk to Lisa. I'm sure they won't say no. What kind of relationship do they have with each other?" "It's nobody's business. It's show business. And in show business, everybody lies and plays their roles. They're not the first and they won't be the last. They'll get used to it." But Lisa absolutely refused to lie. That's cheating the viewer. The girl was indignant. It's not fair. Benjamin didn't want to pretend to be anything either. "Dad, are you out of your mind?" he asked when he heard his father's suggestion. "Let your Michael and his genius ideas go on stage and make a fool of themselves. I have never lied to my audience and I never will." No matter how hard the men tried to persuade the young people to accept their proposals and the rules of the game, it was all to no avail. Benjamin and Lisa stood firm. They had to forget about plans for new projects, but after a while the idea was revived again. It happened after Benjamin revised his attitude towards Lisa. At a certain point, the young man increasingly began to catch himself in the thought that the girl is not indifferent to him. They were not an ideal couple, and love in its usual perception between them, perhaps, was not either. But they were united by something much more important than creativity. They thought and perceived creative reality in the same way, and this was worth a lot. And only for the sake of it the young man dared to make the first step towards Lisa, who though was very much offended by him, but still had strong enough feelings for him. He did not call the girl, but came straight away. His visit came as a complete surprise to Lisa. "Mom, I'll talk to him myself," she said, when Betty called Lisa. When she opened the door, the woman was very surprised. "Who do you want?" she asked. "I would like to talk to Lisa," the young man replied. "Who are you?" "I'm the father of her babies." He had never imagined that he would say that so easily a few weeks ago, but now he wanted to see not only Lisa, but also the babies. It was unusual for a young man to feel like a father, but he was sure that in time he would get used to it. "I've come to talk to you," he said. "I want us to discuss our father's proposal." By then, Benjamin knew everything. Ethan had told him what Lisa and Michael had in common. He had not told him the details, but he had told him. And he, like Ethan, like Michael, would love for her to have a relationship with him. "Do you want us to lie to the audience?" Lisa asked. "If that's what you're after, you've come all this way for nothing. I never socialized to this extent." "Not at all," replied Benjamin. "Have you got it all wrong? I refuse to be lied to myself. Let's not deceive anyone. Let's just agree to work. Let's be as sincere and open as possible. I'm sure we'll make it work." "How do you envision it?" Lisa was surprised. "What kind of sincerity and openness are you talking about? If you don't love me and don't care about our children?" "It's not exactly like that." Benjamin didn't know how to express his thoughts and what he felt, so he openly confessed to Lisa that he didn't know what love was. "How so?" she asked. "You grew up in such a loving family. Your parents have done everything they could for you your whole life. They love each other, and you don't know what love is." "I don't believe that. But that's just the way I was born," said Benjamin. "Not of this world." Lisa took some time to think about it. Benjamin went into town and waited for her answer. He had never waited so long for anything in his life. The few days she hadn't called seemed like an eternity. "Take it," There's nothing to think about, Betty said. Come to the capital, create an ensemble or whatever Michael suggested. You don't want to sit in the countryside. You'll sit like this all your life, and then we'll look back. There's nothing to remember. You'll never forgive yourself. And when your sons grow up and learn about what you gave up, they will not only laugh at you, but also reproach you for depriving them of a full, bright, and prosperous life. Her mother's last phrase was decisive for Lisa. It was like being thrown into cold water. You know, you're probably right, don't you? She said. Really, why am I sitting here? And my boys, they deserve the most secure, prosperous life. You're right, Mom. Listening to the conversations of her daughter and granddaughter, Christina only smirked. There was nothing else for the woman to do. But for the first time in a long time, she realized she was wrong. And her family had been smiled upon with real good fortune. She didn't even beat or laugh at Betty's reasoning, which the woman was very much and pleasantly surprised by. Mom, why aren't you saying anything? She asked. Have you been suspiciously quiet lately? Is something wrong? Oh, my daughter. Nothing, sighed, answered Christina. I don't know what to say. I can't get over the shock. It's all so sudden. I didn't even think it was possible. Betty went over to her mother and hugged her. For some reason, the woman wanted to do that at that moment. She sympathized with her. Christina herself had not seen anything in life and did not believe in others. And it turned out to be for nothing. That's how it turned out. Michael's project was expectedly successful. Lisa Benjamin in new images and with a new program. Very quickly, the two kids gained popularity. Talika gave them an entourage in the eyes of the audience for young people for the image of a successful family, and after a while they became such and became not only on stage, but also in life. So have you figured out what love is? Asked Lisa, when Benjamin made her a marriage proposal. It sounded very sincere. At first, the young man wanted to make it public, but then he decided not to make it so personal. Ethan also hinted to his son that the public considered him and Lisa to be husband and wife, so this could be seen as hypocrisy. Yes, Benjamin replied. I've figured out what love is, and my love is my love. It's you, our children, and of course music. I really want you and me to walk hand in hand all our lives, so that we have something to pass on to our children. Lisa was touched to the core by the young man's words. She knew that there was not a drop of lie in them. The girl felt it. The wedding was held modestly, as the young people wanted, in the folk style. Lisa invited not only her friends and friends from the capital, but also the whole village. Yes, we have never had such a wedding before. People whispered behind the back of the bride, to whom they changed their attitude and even apologized to Lisa for the ugly words they had said to her after returning home. Lisa did not hold a grudge against them. How can you hold grudges against people who have never seen anything better in their lives? It was silly. She really hoped that she could help them change their lives for the better. And she did. Lisa helped some people build new homes, some people renovate. The royalties allowed. Why not help good people? The most unexpected guest at the wedding was Kathy. The woman asked her husband to bring her along. She had important words to say to Lisa, that she welcomed her into the family and was always welcome in her home, not only for her and Benjamin, but also for Betty. Thank you, Lisa replied. I'm very glad you understand your father. Men who love men don't have other men's children, the woman replied. What's true is true. After a while, Lisa moved her mother and grandmother to the capital. The girl bought them a separate apartment. No way, you didn't have to. Betty exclaimed when she heard about the purchase. We live quite well in our village, and we would have kept on living. No, Mom, replied Lisa. Now you will live like people. Having moved to the capital, the woman remembered her old hobby and took up painting again. Over time, her paintings began to be in demand. Not without the help of the same Michael, the woman was able to organize several exhibitions. And I told you that someday will come in your star hour, said Lisa to her mother. The girl was genuinely happy for her success. Yes, my daughter, thank you, Betty replied. I didn't believe it. I can't believe it now, but I have to. Are you right? Right. Christina didn't stay away either. She regularly lamented that Betty didn't spend enough time with her grandchildren. She was so happy for Lisa and Benjamin that she was always there for them, whether it was a concert, an event, or a tour. The grandchildren were looked after. And what could be better for young parents than to have a grandmother with such a caring and meticulous woman always available to help? You cannot be afraid to give birth to new heirs, will not have to hire any nannies and entrust the children to a stranger. Lisa and Benjamin did. "I have good news for you," she said on her return from another tour. The folk duo had been traveling all over the country for several months and were planning to showcase their creativity abroad as well. "What's the news?" Benjamin asked in anticipation. "We are going to have a baby," answered Lisa. "No way. When did you know?" "I knew before the trip, but I didn't want to tell you so you wouldn't worry." Lisa did the right thing. Benjamin was indeed a very anxious father. It came out of him all of a sudden just like that. Of course, he would have hated for a pregnant Lisa to continue to work such a busy schedule. He was even willing to cancel everything to spend the happiest months at home next to his wife. "The career could wait," the young man said. "But if anything happens to the baby, I'll never forgive myself. Have you become so unethical?" Lisa replied, "What could happen to her? And why should it happen all of a sudden? Do you know how many cases there are? Let's not take any chances. Cancel all the tours and concerts, or I'll perform alone. I'd feel safer that way." But Lisa didn't even think about canceling anything. She went on tour and performed at concerts until the day she gave birth, sharing her happiness with the audience. And when the due date came, a healthy baby girl was born, which Lisa went to deliver right from the concert hall. "Well, Charles, I congratulate you," she said. "Now you and I are a real large family." "Yes," replied the young man. "We set a worthy example for the people and work for, and on behalf of the common people." This little girl was not the last heir of the happy couple. Lisa and Benjamin became parents of 5 children, whom they loved very much and brought up worthy people.